this video, we will be covering the events within Germany leading up to the remilitarization of the Rhineland. We will be starting with the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, and we will be finishing with Hitler's rearmament in 1935. We will be covering all the major events in between these two events. So, now let's begin. The Treaty of Versailles was the peace deal that ended the First World War in favor of the Allied powers. This deal was made largely without any German involvement whatsoever, and was primarily dictated by America, the UK, France, and Italy, and its terms were imposed on Germany. These terms included massive war reparations in order to pay for the pensions of all the soldiers. It's also included the disarmament of Germany. Germany's army was to be reduced to 100,000 soldiers and only be used for defensive purposes. They were also not allowed to have tanks or proper boats. Lastly, this included the stripping of lots of Germany's land and its colonies. Let's just take a few colonies here and there. You can have the rest. Anyways, this peace treaty had one term that the Germans found most detestable. This was the War Guilt Clause. This said that the Germans were responsible for causing World War I, and that the Allied powers were not responsible for this. The Germans saw this as incredibly unfair, since they believed that everyone who was involved in the war was responsible for its outbreak. This created a massive feeling of bitterness within Germany, and this eventually led to the rise of nationalism inside of Germany. By late 1922, Germany had started to default on its war reparations rather regularly. But near the end of 1922, Germany had defaulted on a major timber reparation. This caused the Reparations Council to be assembled in order to deal with this issue, since Germany was now declared to be in default of its reparations. The French delegate had initially wanted to sanction Germany in order to enforce payments. However, the English delegate wouldn't support this. This caused the French delegate to think that it would be a better idea to occupy the Ruhr Valley area within Germany. The Ruhr Valley is an area, it's a rather large area in Germany that encompasses roughly this area. And this was the industrial heart of Germany, and still is today. The occupation of this area caused massive economic hardship within Germany, and passive resistance to the French occupation had caused the German economy to go into hyperinflation since people weren't working, and this drastically devalued the German mark, causing further economic problems and instability for Germany.
Today's paper.
Thank you. The occupation of the Ruhr also caused sympathies with Germany to rise, as in the chaos of the occupation, 130 Germans were killed. This antagonized the French, since they took such drastic measures to enforce their reparations and caused sympathies for Germany and its people, especially within countries like the UK and US. The French were forced to leave the Ruhr Valley after 2 years. However, they had managed to collect their reparations in this period, but there were lasting effects for this occupation. This has caused the popularity of right-wing nationalist parties to rise within Germany, since Germany's weakness was apparent during this occupation. This had caused the need for the German people to make Germany great again.
MAGA.
Although Hitler did not drink, beer halls were the usual meeting place of parties who disliked the Weimar Republic. The beer hall push was an attempted coup led by Hitler and his followers to overthrow the government of the Weimar Republic. This failed coup got Hitler sentenced to 5 years in prison. However, in reality, he only served approximately 9 months. And this wasn't even prison in the conventional sense that we think of. Iron bars, tough circumstances, it's a hard life. Hitler was kind of just hanging out with his friends and writing his cool new book, Mein Kampf, which was all about his struggle, his uneventful life, and his desire to make Germany great again.
MAGA.
Now, let's see this fantastic book known as Mein Kampf. Let's take a closer look.
In Mein Kampf, Hitler talks about his idea of the Jewish peril, which is the theory that there is a Jewish conspiracy to gain world leadership. This shows Hitler's anti-Semitic views, which is gone over more in the autobiographical portion of his book, where he talks about how he became more anti-Semitic and militaristic, especially during his time in Vienna. Mein Kampf is also seen as Hitler's work in political theory. He talks about what he deems to be the world's two evils, communism and Judaism, and why he hates them so much. Also, in Mein Kampf are Hitler's ideas of what is ruining Germany. and how he can make it great again. He blamed the parliament of the Weimar Republic, the Jews, the Social Democrats, and the Marxists for Germany's issues. He claimed that the parliament, the Marxists, and the Social Democrats were all conspiring and working towards Jewish interests. In Mein Kampf, he announced that he wanted to destroy the parliament, since it was corrupt by nature in his opinion, and that once he did so, he could make Germany great again. Hitler also talked about the idea of Lebensraum, which is German for living space. This is an Eastern orientation policy involving the Germans taking the Eastern lands, eradicating the Slavs, and using it as more living space for the German people. This would expand Germany's borders and put more resources under direct German control. Hitler saw this as Germany's historic destiny, and that this policy of Lebensraum should be pursued by Germany soon. Overall, Mein Kampf is a clear window into Hitler's anti-Semitism, political theory, and his plans for Europe.
After his imprisonment, Hitler decided that he wanted to go after power in Germany a new way, a more diplomatic approach to power. He and his Nazi party were going to become the largest party within the German parliament and seize power through fair diplomacy. The Dawes Plan of 1924 was an attempt to solve the issue of reparations that Germany had to pay. The plan proposed the evacuation of the Ruhr area by foreign troops to help re-enable the German economy. The payments were also to be staggered and would increase by year. The Reichsbank was to be reorganized under Allied supervision. Sources of reparations were to be expanded to include transportations and custom taxes so as to make it easier for Germany to pay the reparations. Germany would then be granted a loan of $200 million, mainly from US Wall Street bonds. The Dawes Plan helped massively to rebuild German industry, which allowed them to pay the reparations better. It transferred the burden of German war reparations to American bond investors and begun ties between German industries and American investment banks. This resulted in an expansion of the German steel industry and the German rearmament program. This allowed German industrialists to reduce coal exports to France, which weakened French steel and allowed German steel to become dominant in Europe once again.
I'm finally in the league.
As you just saw, Germany joined the League of Nations on September 9th, 1926. This was significant since it showed Germany's return to the world political stage and granted Germany quite a large deal of international recognition. Joining the League also helped to politically stabilize Germany, which lengthened the lifespan of the rather short-lived Weimar Republic. The admission into the League allowed Germany to better negotiate their reparations and eventually led to the Young Plan in 1929. The Young Plan was the final payment plan for Germany's war reparations. It greatly reduced Germany's war debts down to... Is something missing in here?
No.
Oh, okay. Basically nothing. It reduced Germany's payments down to 8 billion USD. However, it stretched these payments out over 58 years. On top of it, these annual payments could be divided into two parts. The mandatory part, which was 1/3 of the overall payment, and the postponable part, which was 2/3 of the payment. This meant that Germany could just delay 2/3 of their very small annual payments if they ever felt like it, meaning that they basically didn't have to pay their war reparations at all. The Young Plan would have allowed Germany to recover even faster and basically be unaffected by the reparations, but it wasn't actually implemented because of the Great Depression and the Wall Street crash that caused it in 1929. The Depression basically nullified Germany's obligation to pay any reparations since they were scrapped for 1 year during the start of the Depression, and Germany never paid their reparations again. In the German federal elections of July 1932, the NSDAP, or the Nazi Party, became the largest party with 37% of the vote. Now, as the largest party, the NSDAP was allowed to elect the Reichstag president. They appointed Hermann Göring to the position. This appointment granted the Nazi Party a large amount of power within the government of Germany. The next election, there was no majority party again. In fact, the Nazis lost some seats in the parliament. However, they were now able to form a coalition that granted them the majority in parliament, allowing them to pass laws that they wanted. Throughout this process, Hitler was demanding of the chancellorship. However, President Hindenburg was reluctant to give him this position. When Chancellor von Papen stepped down, he told Hitler that he could make him chancellor if Hitler appointed von Papen as vice chancellor. Since he held influence with President Hindenburg, he could make this happen. Von Papen's support of Hitler allowed Hitler to become the Chancellor, since Hindenburg, despite being reluctant, was pressured into making Hitler the Chancellor. Hitler's appointment to Chancellor indicated a massive shift rightward in German politics. However, Hitler's impact would be disregarded internationally, since it was assumed that you could never make Germany a dictatorship, it's so democratic, which is rather ironic looking back on it. The Reichstag fire was started 1 month after Hitler became the Chancellor. The Nazis decided to blame the communists for the burning of the Reichstag, and they pressured President Hindenburg into declaring a state of emergency. This was known as the Enabling Act, since it allowed the Nazis to gain complete control of the government with no restrictions. Also, the Nazis completely purged the Communist Party and replaced them with Nazi Party members. This made it so that the Nazi Party was the majority party within the parliament without any coalition necessary. The Reichstag fire allowed the Nazis to consolidate their power. The state of emergency completely suspended civil liberties and allowed them to eliminate their opposition. Furthermore, this allowed them to suspend any anti-Nazi press, allowing them to control the people even more with propaganda. Shortly after Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany, he decided to withdraw Germany from the League of Nations on October 9th, 1933, at the Geneva Disarmament Convention. Many supported this move because they believed that Germany was being taken advantage of by foreign powers. The withdrawal of Germany from the League of Nations allowed them to militarize and improve their army beyond what was previously possible. Now, let's take a snapshot into history. Say, France, don't you think that guns are just such an awful thing to have? You know, guns are just so painful.
Are you kidding? The epitome of cancer in our society.
Just such an evil thing. Don't you agree, Germany?
You know what? You guys are done. Okay, I don't have any guns. I need guns to protect myself. Okay, I'm gonna leave.
What are you doing?
Bruh.
The area of the Saarland was an area taken from Germany and transferred over to France under League Protectorate for 15 years after World War I and as a result of the Treaty of Versailles. After 15 years, there was a plebiscite to be held that would determine whether or not the Saar would remain with France or return to Germany. The Saar is German, so as expected, 9 out of 10 people voted to return to Germany. This was very important for Germany, as the area was very rich in coal and contained many railways and railway stations. The return to the Saarland boosted the German economy, as you can see from our exaggerated graph. This was also very important for the Nazi Party, who saw this as a major political win, despite it being an expected outcome. To them, this was the first step in their unification of all Germans under one greater German state, and the return of the Saarland was vital for their plans. The rearmament of Germany was actually started under the Weimar Republic. However, it was done in secret without knowledge of the Allied powers. Hitler's rearmament officially started in 1935 when he decided to openly reject the arms restriction imposed on Germany, and he restarted conscription into the military.
Oh, here it is. Alright, so you need to join the army so we can defeat the enemies, alright?